Hi, welcome to the Shepherd Podcast. I'm your host, I'm Pastor Chris. Thank you for joining me for another episode. On the podcast, we like to familiarize you with people here in the ministry at Shepherd of the Hills. We have so many great people in our church, school, and child care. And so today I'd like to introduce you to another one of those great people. Her name is Virginia Axtell. She's been here for quite a while. This is her 24th year of ministry at Shepherd of the Hills, and she is coming up to 40 years in ministry altogether. So she's done a lot in her career, touched a lot of lives, especially children. And so we want to hear about what she's done and who she is. She's currently in an administrative support role. You'll see her in our school office a lot and all kinds of places on campus. She's very busy doing many things, wearing many hats, and I appreciate her taking some time out of her busy day to be with us today for the podcast. Virginia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So tell us a little bit about the role that you do here. I think you're a face that pretty much everybody sees at the school.
Yes.
How do you spend your time typically during the day?
Well, I arrive before 6:30 in the morning to welcome the children that are on campus as early as 6:30. Mm-hmm. And then during the day, there are a multitude of activities and responsibilities. Something as simple as placing a Band-Aid on a knee or allowing the first aid to happen. I answer the telephone. I answer parents' questions, whatever. Also in the administrative support role, I work with Miss Gary on accomplishing some tasks for her as they come up. Also during the day, we keep track of attendance on campus. We keep track of just a variety of things going on, the activities. We welcome vendors on campus. We welcome the counselors and therapists that come see our children on campus. Then toward the end of the day, I'm in the parking lot, welcoming the families that are arriving for dismissal and to pick up their children at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. You know, as we're talking, I'm thinking about a skill that I feel is very hard for a lot of people, and that is dealing with interruptions. You probably get a lot of interruptions, just the number of people coming in and out with various needs.
Yes.
So you may be, working on a computer, concentrating on something, and then you've got to switch gears and help with whatever's going on.
That's a definite.
Yeah.
That definitely happens throughout the whole day.
Yeah. Was that a challenge for you to adjust to a job where you get a lot of interruptions?
As a classroom teacher, you just work through the day as it comes to you. So the children have all kinds of needs in the classroom setting. And I know now, placing a phone call into the classroom, I understand that interruption that happens in the classroom when you're teaching. Yeah. You have to answer the phone. It could be a message about an early dismissal. All of a sudden there's a fire drill that's been scheduled, a lockdown drill. So there's even in the classroom, there's a tremendous amount of interruptions. So it flows with my day.
Okay, so you were kind of used to that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Any tips for people who struggle with handling interruptions and switching gears? Anything that might help people who that doesn't come very easily for them?
I think you just have to stop and look at each situation. As a child comes in needing an ice pack or a Band-Aid or even calling for EMT service, and that may just be that need for that moment that you need to put your attention to that task. Yeah.
I guess a lot of it has to do with valuing the person in front of you, even if it's just on a moment's notice. Mm-hmm. So you keep busy, you wear a lot of different hats around the campus. Now, you've been in this role for how long?
This will be my 4th year. Yeah. Moving out of the classroom and working with Ms. Gary's administrative support. And with that in mind, that was the goal for the Board of Education, is to allow me to work more closely with her to establish some tasks that she could take off her plate and I could work with her on that. It's moved more into managing the school office and handling those responsibilities. Plus, I have a very dedicated coworker, Carol Ibata, who I trust dearly, and she steps in to fill any void that's needed in the school office. Yeah, it seems like you guys make a great team. Yes, we work very well together. And the position seems to play to your strengths as well. You are very good with attention to detail, I feel.
and you have a lot of poise. It seems like you can keep your cool when things are going crazy. So it seems to play to your strengths.
Every once in a while, you can tell that the load is a little heavy, and so it's just time to step away for a minute, regroup, and then start over.
Yep, that's a good strategy. So prior to what you're doing now, you were in the classroom.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your journey as a teacher here at Shepherd?
My journey here at Shepherd starts when Mount Olive closed.
Okay.
So Mount Olive Lutheran School closed in the spring of 1997.
Okay.
We no longer had the desire. Well, there was no longer a desire to continue to school at that location.
Okay.
On Westshire Drive and 410 in Westshire. So the school closed, and as a called worker, Mr. Axtell gave me a phone call, reached out in a phone call and asked if I would come for an interview over here at Shepherd of the Hills, which I did.
Okay.
And then so the fall of 97 is when I started here in 4th grade.
Okay.
So that was a bittersweet, because you don't ever want to leave a Lutheran school. You don't want to leave an established education environment. You think it'll continue on and on, but God had different plans, so one door closed, another door opened, and I came over here to serve at Shepherd.
And you were in 4th grade. Were you in that grade the whole time that you've been here?
Most. There was a 5-year period that I was in junior high.
Oh, okay.
There was a large group of teachers that left in 1 year, and there were some voids. So I offered to go up into 6th grade as a homeroom teacher to be an established face, one that the families recognized, and so there was a big void in some of the classroom areas. So I felt like that was important, and parents knew me from 4th grade. They were comforted knowing that I had moved up into junior high.
Sure.
So I was homeroom for the 6th grade for a 5-year period.
Okay.
But the homeroom up in 6th grade, as you will know as your children move up in junior high, you have a multitude of teachers that work with your children.
Right.
So I also worked with 7th and 8th graders in different subject areas.
Okay. What's the difference between working with a 4th grader and a 6th grader? It's only 2 years apart, but I think that a lot happens and they change a lot over 2 years.
Even as my 4th graders, I was still able to mold them, guide them, work them into an organizational skills that could help them with their learning. By the time they get to 6th grade, we have an influx. We often have a big influx of children that have come from outside of Shepherd into our classroom environment.
That's true.
So that's a whole new group that we're teaching the traditions of the school, the expectations of the school and the classroom.
Yeah.
And you're reteaching a lot.
That's
just
a good
in
point.
That environment.
Yeah, that is a transition point from 5th to 6th where you get a lot of new students, whereas I would say most of our 4th graders, they've been with us for 3rd and 2nd.
One year I can recall we had 24 new students in the 6th grade area. So that
Really?
opened up. You can think where you have half your children or half your students in 6th grade are brand new to the school environment. And so it was interesting to watch that blend and have our students teach the new students the ways of Shepherd of the Hills.
That must have been an interesting year with all those new students at one time.
It was a wonderful group of students that came to us that year. We were very blessed.
Oh, fantastic. So that's been your career at Shepherd. I'm kind of working backwards. We started with your position now and then your teaching position. You mentioned Mount Olive, and I told you ahead of our interview I was interested to talk about Mount Olive because that's one of the historic Lutheran churches in San Antonio. It's had multiple locations. I remember one time I read a history of it by Ellie Clausen.
Yes.
Yeah, and she wrote a history going all the way back to the beginning. It must have been for its 75th anniversary or something like that. But when you were there 10 years, right?
Yes.
Teacher at Mount Olive. That was one of the big Lutheran schools in San Antonio.
Yes.
Right? So what were the big Lutheran schools in San Antonio when you were at Mount Olive?
Redeemer, Mount Olive, Concordia, Shepherd.
Yeah.
Those were the Four.
The big four?
Mm-hmm.
Had St. Paul shrunk at that point?
They may have still been a preschool at that point.
Okay.
When I started at Mount Olive, that was in the summer of 1987, I spent the first 3 years in the church office working with Pastor Barr. He had just come to Mount Olive from the chaplaincy, active military. So I did serve in the church office for the first 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then Heike Schlager, who was longtime preschool teacher, made a decision to retire, and I moved into the preschool position. The teachers just never would leave at Mount Olive. They just stayed and stayed and stayed. So I moved into the preschool position, and I was there for a number of years, and then my last 2 years was second grade.
Okay. And you said the teachers there stayed a long time.
Yes.
I feel like the same is true at Shepherd. We've had a lot of teachers stay a long time here.
That's true.
What do you think is the secret to such good retention of teachers?
I just really feel like when you have your heart in your work and your ministry is part of that heart work, you just stay.
Yeah, absolutely, when your heart's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Mount Olive, and we don't have to get too much into the story of it, but I'm just curious, how did it get to the point of being a thriving school to the point where you guys had to shut the doors because, we have such a thriving school here now, and I want it to always be a thriving school. So I'm wondering, what lessons we can learn so that we can always be vibrant like we are today.
As we moved toward the end of our time of having a school there, the attendance was dropping. The neighborhood was changing.
Okay.
And the leadership in the church didn't feel like that the changing of the neighborhood was something they wanted to continue to minister to that group, or to the changing demographics of the neighborhood.
Okay.
We had a strong influence with our military right there by Lackland Air Force Base.
Yeah, very
that
close.
Relationship was strong.
Okay.
We also had different leadership in senior pastors over time.
Okay.
There were different senior pastors that were leading the conversation.
Okay.
Vernon Clausen was my principal for many, many years, and he had a heart for ministry.
Yeah.
That was really difficult for him to see that the school was closing.
So you had lots of different visions come in, and not all those visions aligned with how things used to be and reaching out to the community.
Just a construction project, for example, we were promised a gym for many, many years, 10 to 15 years. That never came to fruition. So we didn't have facilities that would allow us to grow.
Oh, okay.
We had some portable buildings on the property. We had large fields. Most of the schools came to Mount Olive campus to do their soccer games because we had the large fields available to us.
Yeah.
But we just didn't seem to get the right push toward completing a building project that would continue to allow us to grow. And then again, as I said, the leadership in the ministry changes. The district becomes involved in the conversation and decision making. We no longer had school beyond the spring of 1997.
Yeah. So it sounds like there were a convergence of factors, changing demographics, not having the best facilities that you may have needed, different vision at the top coming in and changing the conversation, maybe not as much congregational support over time. A lot of things played into that. I'm wondering, based on your experience, you mentioned the facilities, what does it feel like for you to see the facility going up here, having seen it not happen, and now here it is happening at Shepherd?
I'm honestly still anxious for completion.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. We're not there yet. No.
So that's the best I can offer. It's just still a little anxious about completion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, God's led us so far. I trust He'll get us there. And then just one more thing on Mount Olive. How did it feel to have to close down a school? What was that feeling?
As we walked through the last school year, and I say we had about five full-time teachers at that point, and Diane Wallace was still on staff with us,
Yeah.
Eunice Jernander, Kathy Cano. We had several other staff members still there. And it was just a daily walk of between, we still have a ministry here in front of us, and yet it won't feel the same as we walk through the school year, knowing it's the last Christmas service, it's the last Christmas program, it's our last Easter program, it's our last graduation.
Wow. You knew that the whole year?
Yes.
Wow, what a feeling.
Those were difficult season. That was a difficult season, yes.
And the families knew that as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they started moving on. Some families came to Shepherd before we finished.
Yeah.
Some went to Concordia. Some went back to public school. Again, we had a military influx in and out, so families just had moved on in the military service. But
So based on your previous experience, what would you say at Shepherd would be one or two keys to remaining a vibrant school, even with all the changes that can happen?
I would hope that, first and foremost, that the congregation would see the school as mission outreach.
Okay.
That's a vital vision for the school to remain important.
Yeah, of course.
We have a lot of students at our school that are not part of a congregation.
Right.
The mission field is ripe and ready.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I would hope that the Shepherd congregation members would see this as just a real blessing in their backyard
Okay.
of outreach.
So the congregational support is really a key piece in the health of the school.
Yes.
Yeah. Thankfully, we have that ingredient, and we want to continue to keep that strong. A lot of great supporters.
Attached to that is dedicated teachers.
Yeah.
And these teachers at Shepherd of the Hills work very, very hard.
They do.
Every single day to make the best learning environment for the children, also to reach out and have the best relationships that they can with the parents. They're very dedicated teachers here.
I agree. And you probably see that in a different way now.
Yes.
In the position you're in.
That's really the fun part, too, because I've worked
Yeah.
with these teachers as together in the classroom, and now I get to be their support, provide what they're asking for on any given time of the day. And that's where my servant heart feels most joyful. It's like, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Can I do something for you? Can I copy these papers 50 times for you and have that set ready? Can I make this phone call for you, for this parent? Just whatever I'm needed. I really feel dedicated to these teachers that work so hard here.
Wow, I can see how that motivates you to want to be in a supportive role. Is you've been in their shoes, and you understand anything to lighten the burden is such a big help.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. That gives me more insight into what you do. So let's go back then to, we're working backwards chronologically. So you graduated from Concordia, Austin.
Right.
Right? Me too.
Well, it had transferred, it changed a few times since you'd been there.
Yeah.
So when I started, it was a junior college. It was still just a 2-year institution. And prior to that was, I think, a boys' college.
Oh, okay.
Getting in preparation for ministry.
Right, okay.
So I was there, and it was only a 2-year school. Then the end of the second year, the conversation was to add the third year. And then the third year, we added the fourth year. So I was out of the first graduating class out of Concordia, Austin in 1982.
That's really special.
That was really fun because I didn't know what plan I was headed toward. I didn't have a career field in mind when I first started at Concordia. I thought it was going to be a business major, and I felt like after taking a few of the math classes, my talents might be needed somewhere else.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So I went toward education, and it's been a great ride.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. So while you were there, they just kept extending it. They just wanted to keep you as long as possible, right?
Yeah. So I was out of the first graduating class in 1982, and then many years later, Shepherd provided me with the opportunity to go and complete my master's degree, which I finished in 2005.
Also at Concordia?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. You're a tornado through and through.
Right. So we were stags.
Stags at that time.
We were stags when we started, and then
okay.
as years went on, tornadoes came about.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What was your emphasis on your master's?
Curriculum and instruction.
Okay. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so came out of Concordia, and then before that, let's go back to your early years as we're working backwards. You grew up in Luling, is that right?
Luling, Texas.
For those who don't know where Luling is, where is it?
If you're on I-10 traveling toward Houston, you would go San Antonio, Seguin, Luling, and you'll smell Luling before you reach it.
You'll smell it?
Yes. So if the windows are down, you'll smell Luling. It's the sulfur from the oil fields.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And so a hot spot on I-10 and Luling is Buc-ee's.
Oh, that's where the Buc-ee's is.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know exactly
and
where
I didn't get
is.
to grow up with Buc-ee's there,
No.
but it's there for everyone else now.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's what makes it famous.
Right.
Now, what also made it famous was the watermelon thump.
That's right.
Tell us about a watermelon thump.
Right. Well, in the month of June, the watermelons were becoming ripe in the fields, and it was a great contest to see who had farmed the largest watermelon. Mm-hmm. A festival grew out of that. When I was growing up, we had a watermelon thump queen. I wasn't crowned as queen, but I was on the court as the princess.
Uh-huh.
My sponsor was the Luling Lions Club.
Okay.
You ride floats. There's a huge parade. There's an event in the June. I think it's the fourth weekend in June, which I should remember that. There's bands that you can enjoy dancing in the evening. Some of the activities during the day is a car derby race, seed spitting contest, watermelon eating contest, and just all the regular festivities of a small town fun.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever participate in the seed spitting contest?
I did not.
No?
I did not, but I watched quite a few.
Yeah?
And there's some championship watermelons that were grown out of the fields. My favorite is a black diamond. They're different than the long, elongated, dark green, light green striped watermelons. Yeah. So your black diamonds are more rounded and a deeper green. And that's a really good watermelon.
So you have more expertise on watermelons than the average person.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a great place to grow up. Small town, less than 5,000 in population. You knew everybody in town. Whoever you started grade school with, you graduated in high school with them, and it was just a really fun place to grow up.
Yeah. And you were there your whole upbringing?
From age 3 through high school graduation.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay, so growing up in Luling, Texas, in the days before Buc-ee's.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Buc-ee's wasn't there until many years later.
Do you like to eat watermelon today?
Yes.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. What do you do for fun today?
I enjoy gardening. I have a wonderful backyard with mountain laurels and Gerber daisies and other plants in the backyard that take my attention. I like the peacefulness of being in nature. Mm-hmm. For fun, I also enjoy camping with my family. I have 5 grandchildren now, and we try often as possible to go camping with them, which turns out to probably be about 3 times a year.
Yeah.
But to get away and go camping. I enjoy being outdoors. I'm not a hunter, as a lot of my family are still hunting, but I do enjoy being in the great outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely, especially when the weather's nice like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And tell us a little more about your family then. You mentioned 5 grandchildren, children as well?
Right.
How many?
Well, I have 2 sons. My oldest son is Kerry, and his wife is Christy. Mm-hmm. Their 2 children are Carol and Kelly. Mm-hmm. And then my youngest son is John, married to Nicole. They have 3 children, Avery, William, and Emma. Mm-hmm.
Very good. You passed the test. You named all of them.
Named all of them.
Sometimes when you have the camera rolling and the microphone, it's easy to forget things. So, well, what are your, as you're nearing 40 years in ministry, when you look back, what have been some of your favorite things about your ministry career?
The people I work with were just tremendous. Still very close to some of the teachers that I worked with in ministry in the schools. Some of my favorite memories, and I was thinking about this in advance, was field trips.
Field trips.
Which is something we've had to take off our schedules the last few years because of the situation with the COVID and just decisions made with field trips.
Yeah.
When I was first teaching, my first teaching job was Cedar Park and Good Shepherd Lutheran School in Cedar Park, North Austin area,
Okay.
Almost Round Rock.
Yeah.
And I had 8 students. It was a combination class of 3rd and 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were living in Hallettsville, as they still do. And so we scheduled an overnight trip from North Austin to Hallettsville, which is in Lavaca County. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal. My dad was so thrilled to have the kids there. So we travel to my parents' home, and some of the things on the schedule, we were going to an auction, so a cattle auction downtown Hallettsville. We were going to a fish hatchery, so that the students would see the development of the fish. Okay. We also went to a dairy down the road from my parents' home. And then in the evening, my parents have a stock tank on their property, so the children were fishing. Then we did hot dogs in the evening on the grill, and then my dad finished with some stories. That he was a very big storyteller.
Really?
So that's a memory that is just very, very special.
Yeah.
Then I enjoy teaching Texas history, so any of our Texas history field trips in the area were just fantastic. Yeah. We went to Linden LBJ Ranch in Stonewall.
Yeah.
We've gone to the Mission Trail outreach from Espada, San Juan, San Jose, the Alamo. We've gone through all of those field trips. Yeah. Natural Bridge Cavern, seeing the land of Texas. Mm-hmm. I think field trips make everything just so real to the students. Years ago, we would go to Ocarina Center, and that's a location on the San Marcos River where you get on a glass-bottom boat.
Oh, cool.
Then you get to see all the life that's under the water. Yeah. Through the lens of that glass-bottom boat. So field trips just really were exciting for me. I enjoyed planning them, going on the field trips, and just watching the children experience what we've been talking about in the classroom. Yeah,
there's nothing like being there, seeing things. You can tell them about it, but that hands-on experience really brings it home.
It does.
Yeah. Last thing I want to ask you about is just your faith. Can you tell me a little bit about your faith and how it's helped you in your life?
I was raised in the Episcopal Church, and when I became, so I went through confirmation as a 12-year-old, and then when I began as a student at Concordia in Austin, I was surrounded by Lutherans and decided to go through adult confirmation at that point. So then I attended the Lutheran Church. The faith walk is still the same, where you just have to trust that God will walk you through the struggles. My favorite Bible verse is, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And that daily walk, knowing even in my weakness, I can receive the strength from God.
Yes.
A lot of times I tell myself, be still and know that God will handle this. Yeah. That's very important in my life.
Yep.
I am an avid listener of Christian music. Caleb radio station 91.3. And because of my travels back and forth from campus are extensive, I live across the city.
Yeah.
And a lot of time in the vehicle, a lot of time in the car. I need to make sure my heart, my mind is in the right place for ministry every day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to do that with music.
Yes.
Yeah. And I asked you about children and grandchildren. I can't remember if I asked you about your husband.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Robert Axtell is my husband. We were married in the spring of 1996. on the Ides of March. So that's something who always kind of gives me that little. Bob and I met on a blind date, and prior to that, having been divorced from my first marriage, so there was some time in between that you have to find a new way.
Yeah.
Find a new way to live as a single parent. Find a new way to live in church ministry. Just find your path again.
Yeah.
And so when I was able, when Robert and I met, and that was through a blind date, there was just a real strong feeling of trust for both of us because of our relationships we'd experienced in the past.
Sure.
So that's where our relationship was very deep.
Yeah.
A trust and knowing that the hurt on either side didn't want to get repeated.
Yeah, right.
And then so just walking that real life faith through the church.
Yeah.
And being able, and also, Pastor, looking at people a little differently since my walk had changed. And I think that was a way of God teaching my heart to look at other people's situations differently.
Yeah, I think the hard things we go through in life, it softens our hearts and gives us more compassion for others.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, that's a powerful note, I think, to end on right there. And I really appreciate you sharing about yourself and your ministry, and it's been a joy to get to know you better in this way.
Well, I appreciate you asking me to share.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for watching and listening to the Shepherd Podcast. Please continue to join us as we bring you more people from Shepherd of the Hills that are great for you to get to know their stories and their perspective on things, as you got to hear from Virginia today. Until then, the Lord's blessings to you. May He keep you healthy and safe and strong. The peace of the Lord be with you today.